An article written in a Swedish newspaper about the Armenian massacres changes the destiny of 19-year-old Альма Йоханссон. She decides to become a missionary and leave for Turkey. For a family with Protestant background, her decision was welcomed, whereas sailing to a faraway country of ill manners was not understandable, even unacceptable. Before the family could overcome the shock, the girl had already acquired the profession of nurse. In 1902, Alma's train headed to Constantinople. She was 21 years old.
In Asia Minor, where we used to live, no one had the slightest idea about what was happening in the world beyond. That is the reason why the declaration of war in Europe and the draft in Turkey roared like a thunder in a clear sky. Armenian men resembled convicts more than soldiers. As a rule, they were not given arms.
Альма Йохансson and Bodil Björn together served in the German orphanage of Mush. One day, a guard knocks on the gate of their orphanage and reads the government order about exiling all the Armenians to Mesopotamia. The request to spare the children is declined.
I went to plead to the governor. I hope I will never meet such a monstrous person in my life. But unexpectedly, I met a high-ranking officer there who calmly listened to me and swore with an officer's honor that nothing bad would happen to the Armenian children. I returned to the school and told the children to wear one more piece of clothing. I gave to all a bag full of food and began to bid adieu. I am unable to describe our parting. I was deprived of the ability to think for several days. After several days, our baker visited us. He had seen our priest, teacher Markar, and pharmacist Rupen. When tied with ropes, they were taken to be killed. The rest, about 100 people, were buried alive in a big hole outside the city, or were driven to shut houses and burned alive. A police officer was bragging about being one of those that burned our children. Sitting on the ground, holding my head in horror, it seemed like I was losing my sanity. My children. After all, I loved them like my own children.
Альма Йохансson and Bodil Björn left Mush with broken hearts, having witnessed their children being killed.
When the news came that the Armenians had been killed, down to the last person in Mush, the commandant told me personally, "Now already, there isn't even a Christian dog in the country. It is time for you to leave as well. Foreigners no longer have anything to do here."
The American Near East Relief Welfare Organization, which operated among the needy of the Near East, offered cooperation to the women's missionary workers, Sweden. Альма Йохансson leaves for Saloniki, Greece, with the help of this organization. Not far from Saloniki, in the villages Harilaos and Hermanköy, the women's missionary workers of Sweden established schools. In the 1930s, alone in the school of Hermanköy, there were 103 children. Альма Йохансson was periodically sending articles to the Women's Missionary Workers magazine. Her reports and publications were circulating in the whole of Europe. The archive of women's missionary workers, kept in the National Archives of Stockholm, is brimful of letters and reports which are signed by Alma. If no testimony about the Armenian genocide was available, these letters alone would be enough. After returning from Saloniki, Альма Йохансson lived the last years of her life in Stockholm. It is told the woman led a solitary life, sometimes visited her relatives, and gave their children Armenian handiwork items as gifts. I found a few samples of those in Stockholm, in the house of one of the grandchildren of Alma's sister.
Första presenten Alma hade med sig till Sverige när hon kom hem första gången hit, som hon hade sytt till sin systers första barn.
Alma's selfless and dramatic life is summed up in the 3 words imprinted on her gravestone: missionary among Armenians.